Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Sisto Says, powered by Design 2147 in New York City Building and Code and Entitlement Company. John Rusk, it's been a long time.
It has been.
Today we have the honor of having John Rusk, president of Rusk Renovations, and also the co-founder of ProSentry. John, welcome aboard.
Awesome to be here, Sisto.
Power people. John, you and I go back a long way. Long way. And it's funny how social media and people bring other people back together. So, you know, part of my show is always about the power of people and the power of connection. So John and I, you and I did work a long time ago, probably 30 years ago. We've done some great renovation projects, but we also did a dialysis center.
We did.
A long time ago. And when we met, we became friends.
Yeah.
Small story. My wife, your wife, we went to a Broadway show. We've gone to dinner together. And lo and behold, I'm at a Biz Devel event that I'm a member of, and I ran into an architect. And next thing you know, you hit me up. We have a mutual friend, and here you are. You're on the show.
And it's amazing. It's so great.
And that's what makes it great.
Yeah, it's so great to see you again.
So your background when I met you was you were a writer, you were a contractor, you a professor. You've done a lot of really great things in the industry. But today you're here because you intrigued me about something you're working on now that I think everybody in the building world, whether you own an apartment, you own buildings, you're a developer, everybody is looking for ways to protect their investment and also find ways to save money on the escalating cost of insurance.
Yes.
So first, tell us a little bit about, you know, the renovation part of what Rusk is doing these days. Tell us a little bit about the market. I know you work really on a lot of high-end apartments, which I know that market always stays pretty strong in New York City, but it has its moments, and also what you're doing with ProSentry.
So it is great to see you again. So 38 years now, Rusk Renovations has been running in New York City, has not expanded to Florida or Hamptons. We're just here in New York City. And a lot of that is because teaching at Columbia has ended up getting me to have connections because I've had them come and guest lecture. Most of the big property management companies, most of the building architects,
of course,
a lot of job site supers.
Power of people.
Power of people. So we've gotten to know a lot of people, and we've established a reputation as being able to get a lot of things done that other people may not.
That's
so great. We're doing a lot of beautiful townhouses right now. In fact, I just came from one in Brooklyn on Prospect Park West. Beautiful corner limestone townhouse, but we're doing them in Manhattan. We do a lot of penthouses. Teaching at Columbia has also got me used to doing a lot of education. So we go to Europe, for instance. We were in London 2 years ago doing a lecture to help designers from London come to New York and understand what they need to do. So we just did a project with Peter Mikic, who's one of the finest interior designers from the UK, a project at 150 Central Park South.
Beautiful.
Alice Tully's old apartment with a double height living room and a loge for the band.
Wow.
Which it's just incredible.
Well, if you ever get a chance, you could find John Rusk on LinkedIn, and you could really see some of the projects you've worked on. They're just, to me, it's a go-to just to see how beautiful they are. And not only that, it may not be your vision, but you're able to construct the vision of someone else. And it's more like art than it is.
It is amazing. We get to work with incredible budgets for incredible interior designers and architects, you know, who are here in New York City or who come from abroad. We won the best residential interior of all of New York, all of the United States, all of North and South America, and we were in the final four for the best residential interior in the world.
That is so incredible.
Yeah, so that's fun. And it is now, the company, we really worked with my wife, who you know. She joined the company about 20 years ago. She left about 5 years ago.
She was an educator, though. Also,
she was an educator, yeah. But when my daughter, who's now fifth generation builder in the family, came into the company, my wife has moved on to some other interesting things. But she really wanted to build a company that would last forever and really educate people who work at Rusk. So we've won Best Places to Work For. We beat Microsoft one year. And it's really a place where there's a lot of education to help people understand the whole breadth of what they should be
amazing.
doing. And so those people are now really pushing the company into its next generation.
You know what's amazing about that, John? And I know you and I could talk all night.
We
and we
could.
have. And we have. But, you know, today I went to lunch with Fran Volpe and Nate, who are the producers of the show. And we talked about the vision of young entrepreneurs and how everybody wants to be part of this movement. But one of the things as an old school, you know, the OG, right, is you got to have a mission statement. You got to know where you want something to go. And the moment that you talked about your daughter talking about she wants it to be sustainable, that she wants it to be educational, I think that's where a lot of young entrepreneurs either gain great success or they fail because they don't have that foresight to understand what they want out of what they're doing. So you know, I didn't want to diverse from what we were talking about, but you hit the nail on the head. And Fran and I spent some good time today talking about that. So, you know, I'm sure that even in all of your other endeavors, ProSentry, Rusk renovation, your education, there's a mission statement, there's something. So, you know, having said that, you know, you're here to talk to us today about New York City laws have changed a lot.
Yeah.
And this show always promotes New York City laws, zoning laws, because it's for the people that live in the buildings, it's for the people that work in the buildings, whether it's an office business, it's to protect people's investments, whether it's their apartment. You know, it's not everybody owns penthouse apartments on Central Park South. Some people work their whole life to buy a small apartment in Manhattan, and it's their whole life savings, but can be destroyed by a fire, by water, by damages. And you're here today to tell us about some of the products that your team, as the co-founder, have put together to help mitigate those issues and comply with all the new laws that New York City wants to do. So it sounds like it's going to be a really interesting show.
Thank you. It is, because what's happened is there's so much waste in the world. And the average water loss in New York City is north of $75,000. And we can now solve that with a device that costs maybe $70,000. It's crazy. And it's new technology that has just reached the market now. We're really the first company to really exploit it in the way that it can be exploited. So I'm excited to be here because what it does is it very cost effectively extends the roadway for our existing 100-year-old infrastructure here in New York City and across the country. It really makes older buildings become smart in a way that just saves damage.
Without breaking your back
Yeah.
to do it. You know, there is great technology, but, you know, we think about electrical. Okay, we're going to go all electric. Okay, but take an old law tenement and try to make it electrical.
Right, it's impossible.
It's almost impossible.
Right.
But here, some of the products that you showed me before the show seem like, okay, well, you know, the water detection is a strip. You put it behind your toilet and you're good to go.
One of the pleasures of my life is for 38 years, I've been in the basements of all these buildings.
Yeah.
I have a lot of friends who are building now called resident managers. They used to be supers. But I know those guys. I've been in their basements. And so when we started figuring out this company, and we'll start to talk about that, it was really how can we make risk mitigation something that buildings could adopt in the real world, which means the real handymen and porters that we work in these buildings.
Not some college graduate who took all these classes and sits and, you know, it's for the everyday person.
It's for the everyday person, right.
To say, hey, I got a leak on the third floor, I better run up there.
Yeah.
Without having a million things going on.
So right now, so let's go right into that. So the previous technology was BMS systems.
Right.
And so some of the biggest buildings in New York City have wonderful BMS buildings. But their problem, and I won't name names of buildings, is that there's a beautiful server down in the basement.
Right.
They spend a lot of money and time training a guy to run it. As soon as that guy's trained, he gets recruited to go to another building because they lost their guy when they trained him and he went to another building.
Right.
So now that server that's down in the basement, nobody really remembers how to run it, and it's just like expensive and didn't really work. Now, it's not to say it's not working super well in a lot of big buildings, a lot of commercial buildings.
But it has its pros and cons like every other system.
But there's limitations. And so the problem is, how do you stop? And the biggest problem is water leaks in New York City because we live in vertical buildings.
Right, they create the most damage.
Right. The water travels downhill, and it can be a ton of damage in an hour and a half.
if not less.
Right. So this started when about 2019, I have an old house upstate, and I got it wiped out in a big water freeze and leak. So Chubb Insurance called me afterwards and said, okay, we're going to give you a $5,000 credit towards this water leak detection system for your house. So I took a look at that online and saw there was a world of wireless water leak detectors, which I'd never heard of. And I looked at that and I said, well, this is a great solution for a single family house, but it would be amazing if we could make a system for whole buildings, because my clients get watered on all the time.
Well, it's funny that you say that. A few years ago, my wife and I built a new house in upstate New York, also outside of Monticello on Yankee Lake. And when we built it, Chubb said it's mandatory. You have to have this. You got to have a Watts automatic shut off on the washer and dryer, and it had a sensor in the pan, right? And then on the main coming off the well, as soon as it came in the house, I had to have an automatic shut off that was wireless. But now that you mentioned it, they're all independent little systems, but they're not all cohesively working together. So I'm assuming that what you're going to tell us today is your system says, hey, we're not looking at a one-family house, but we're looking at a 60-unit building. It's in Midtown Manhattan, and I needed to do multiple things, but not on a server.
Right, and not in a way that's going to annoy the superintendent, who's going to say this doesn't work for me.
Right, because it's too complicated.
Right, and part of the problems for your single family house, fine, and I have an automatic valve in my house. But what those valves do is they meter how much water's going through.
Right.
And if there's an anomaly, it shuts down the water.
Right.
So my favorite thing is in the middle of having a big party at my house,
your water gets shut
somebody
off.
comes out to me and says, I can't flush the toilet.
Yeah, because there's no
Like,
water.
oh man, yeah, I'm a contractor and the water doesn't work in my house.
Right.
So no good. And in fact, insurance companies have lost big because wealthy people say this is BS and they bypass the system, and then it doesn't.
To be perfectly honest,
Right.
the one that I bought cost me $500 or $450, and I think it's terrible.
Yeah. So the other thing is that realistically, in any building built, every building in New York City has multiple risers going up to every bathroom,
Of course.
every kitchen. Now, buildings being built in the Southwest, oftentimes they have a single water feed going to each apartment and they have their own hot water heater. But for almost all the housing stock, way too many independent riser valves.
Right.
So to put a valve on every one of those and have a plumber
crazy.
put it in, too expensive.
Crazy.
So what we do is we do something called point of leak water leak detection system. And that is the state of the art. And usually, up to now, it's been too expensive. And what point of leak means is that we take one of these, and this is one of our standard water leak detectors. We put that underneath every sink, behind every toilet, underneath dishwashers, underneath ice makers, wherever there might be a leak. And then we have other devices that use like a rope that we put around fan coil units. And fan coil units are the number one leak source in New York City.
Clogged.
Right, exactly. Make me a lot of money, I have to say. So we put these there. They have a 10-year battery, and we'll talk about the technology in a little bit. It's crazy. And so
years.
to make this work, our system is super high-tech in the background. So as soon as there's a leak, within 4 seconds, there's an alert on the app. However, realistically, no resident manager wants to remember to keep his app for the 4 leaks that happen in a year. Now, those leaks might cost $70,000, but paying attention to an app doesn't work. And so what we dedicated ourselves to early on...
We'll pump the brakes on that.
Yeah, sure.
Let me understand that concept for the
Okay.
viewers. So I have an app,
Yeah.
right? And
Yep.
it's got leak detection on
Sure.
it.
Fantastic.
And you get this alert, and after a while you go, oh, sending me the same damn thing every time.
And it drives you crazy.
Right.
Because you get alert. Stupid. So what we realized is that normal people in 2024 are not going to like that. So our alert sends one app alert. But quite frankly, the app, you have it, great. You have it on your dashboard on your computer, great. But that's not really how we're going to turn off the water. Number one, we're going to send a text to your phone. You should get that within 15 seconds. But most importantly, we have a live operator who is going to call the front desk of the building, or if it's a small building or a building without a front desk person, they're going to call the resident manager within about a minute. And if that person picks up the phone and English isn't their first language, we're going to go over to Spanish, and we're going to say, there's a water leak at the dishwasher in apartment 21J at 211 Beresford Avenue. That's how you get the water turned off. So since January, we have had 2,485 leaks we've caught and called buildings for. Of those 2,485 leaks, 0 have been false alarms and 0 have resulted in insurance claims.
That's a pretty good track record.
It's amazing. So as you might imagine, for an insurance company,
Huge.
If they could have this technology installed where there's leaks, but the building catches them right away, sends Jimmy upstairs to turn off the water right away and clean it up, that's a good business to be in because you're charging premiums and not having to pay out for
And
losses.
is it like a subscription based?
Right. So it
System.
is. So the devices cost some money to put in, but generally like around $70 per device. And these devices have a 10-year battery life. So, and they don't chirp. So when the battery goes down, there's not the annoying chirp that then makes residents break them in half, take out the batteries, or take out the batteries for their remote controls. So there's a one-time cost. So like a one-bedroom apartment might have 5 devices. So that's somewhere under, $350. And those devices are going to last 10 years. So about $32 a year, cheap.
Now,
and then there's a monthly subscription,
obviously,
which then is, depending on the building, blah, blah, blah,
right,
somewhere between $1 and $2 per sensor typically per month. So again, $5 a month.
I want to take this through this because I'm sitting here going, when I retire, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to be your salesman and go sell your product.
I'm there for you, man. You go.
I'm doing a renovation right now in Stamford, Connecticut. We downsized our house. We bought a new place. It's all going to be all new.
Right.
And I'm sitting here while you're talking to me going, my wife just told me the other day there's a damn leak under the sink in our house up in Connecticut because she went to pull something out. And of course, the hose, the sprayer on the faucet, the washer went, leaked all over, ruined the bottom of the cabinet.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm saying to myself, for $1 a month, I'm going to get a device like this that says, hey, sis, you should look under your sink.
So far in my life, I have had 4 alerts in my own house. And every time I've thought, this thing has malfunctioned because there's no water coming out. And then I've looked and there has been the very start of a water leak. And that's the exciting point. Most leaks don't start with a gush. They start with a little bit.
Right. And then it slowly, what happens, what happens with a freeze up? You and I know, I've had a place in the country for 50 years. Since I'm a kid, I was at my parents'. My father forgot to turn the thing, the pipes break, it doesn't leak. And then all of a sudden it defrosts and we got all hell broke loose.
And you know what we do for free? For free, all of our water leak detectors also monitor for temperature. So then we set parameters. So you go below 50 degrees,
amazing.
We're calling the front desk of the building and saying, not for nothing, it is 50 degrees in apartment 21J. And the doorman is going to go, they left for Florida. Jimmy, go upstairs, turn on the radiators, close the window. So that big freeze that we had 2 Christmases ago, where every resident manager was running through their buildings because we had a warm November.
Exactly where to go.
People went to Florida. You would know before there was a freeze. You would just go upstairs, turn on the radiator, close the window. No freeze, no drama.
You knew it. So also part of that, while I'm thinking of this, because I'm super intrigued, I have to tell you, is, we talk about smoke detectors, we talk about carbon monoxide, we talk about the water valve, we talk about gas leaks, we talk about all of these things. So how do you integrate, we're talking water, but I know you spoke to me that there's so many other pieces that can fit into this system. So how do you make that all work? Is it all proprietary, that it's just all ProSentry?
So here's the cool thing, and we'll talk about a bunch of different devices, including Local Law 157, which is now spurring this on. There are companies right now that are manufacturers of water leak detection, and they have one device. And they have to be talked into having a business proposition that there's enough need for a device to then invent the thing, get patents for it, and put it on their system. This technology is called LoRaWAN, Long Range Wide Area Network. It was created by a couple of French friends in 2009 who looked at the fact that whales could communicate between Bermuda and the Netherlands underwater. They talk back and forth like thousands of miles. They said there has to be another communications profile way to do this protocol. So Wi-Fi, which you're used to, can communicate a lot of data, but a short distance. Like it can stream video and audio. LoRaWAN didn't have to do that, and this is what's called the Internet of Things. It only needs to send a data packet about a tenth the size of a text, but it needs to be able to send it very far
And fast.
and very energy efficient. And that's why the batteries in this can last 10 years.
Right, because it's not keep drawing and sending.
It's
drawing
not have
and
to do a
sending.
bunch.
Right.
Right.
Searching and doing whatever it's
So
got to do.
it also, and it's very simple technology, so it's not expected to have any update for 20 years because all it has to do is send this little bit of text. It then communicates to this thing, which is the gateway.
Like a router.
Like a router, but a router, you would need a router in every apartment plus an extender.
Correct.
With a gateway, I only need one every 2 or 3 floors, and that's going to be redundant.
So if you did it in a house, you could do the whole house with that.
Right. However, that said, and not to crush your spirit here, but we only do whole buildings. This is more of a robust commercial grade solution because it's not something a homeowner is going to do themselves. It could be, but it's not our business model. Our business model is to do one whole building, and that's why it's so inexpensive. Because then we're just using one gateway, but it's going to serve 20 apartments.
Right. So it becomes much more cost effective.
Yeah, we're going to be selling 1,000 water leak detectors. It becomes cost effective because realistically, in the real estate world, it's a drive to the lowest possible expense. And that's what we've recognized. So we have worked so hard. When we started it, it was like $5,000 per an apartment. Now it's like, $300 to $600 apartment. It's way cheaper.
Sure.
With technology that'll last a long time. So with this technology, though, this gateway can accept the signals from 10,000 devices. So this company that created this technology, they sold it to a company called Senate, which is now Netmore, which is like the Verizon in the world of LoRaWAN. And they basically gave the technology out to the world. They set up a nonprofit called the LoRa Alliance, and that sets communication protocols and privacy protocols. And so they go out to all these manufacturers, and I have a bunch of devices
so
here.
It's almost like they can interact with each other as long as they use that language.
Exactly. And so we insist that they follow the security
Of course.
and the communication protocols, but then it's very cost effective. So like one of our clients, a wonderful guy, Safed, if you're watching, he has a wonderful building, but they use Con Ed steam. And so we put in a bunch of water leak detection. And in his building, they just saved $300,000 on their insurance renewal. Big money. But he had another problem, not water leak. He said, you don't have anything for steam because my steam traps stick open.
Right.
I use Con Ed steam. And you get an environmental ticket, and you're just blowing money down the drain. And so we came up with this. It's one of the tools in our toolbox. It's an industrial strength, basically temperature sensor. And we put it, and I'm giving away my secrets, we put it about 4 feet down.
And when it gets to a certain temperature, the thing's blowing
that
open.
the thing is blowing hot steam.
Of course.
You are a smart guy. And that's what he said, how can I know if my steam trap's stuck open? We said, we'll put a temperature guide down here. If it's working fine, it'll never go above 130. If it gets stuck open, it's going to go to 140, and there you go. We're going to call you within a minute and say, hey, your steam trap's stuck open, which is way better than what he was doing, which is training guys to listen.
Yeah, go with the glass
Exactly.
on the door.
Exactly. So let's talk about Local Law 157. So in 2014, you remember there was the Harlem explosion, took out an entire building, 8 people died. The very next year, 2015, was the East Village explosion that killed 2, injured 20. So New York City Council said, this can't continue. So they passed Local Law 157, which in 2016 said every apartment, every dwelling in New York City needed a smoke detector and a carbon monoxide detector. But then it also said, and at such time as there was a national standard for natural gas detection, the DOB had 180 days to write a rule requiring it in New York City. Everybody forgot about it because there was no national standard. And that national standard was then written by the National Fire Prevention Association, Underwriter Laboratories, and a company in Japan that pioneered natural gas detection. There it's called New Cosmos. Here it's called the Nova Detect. And they, in Japan, from 1980, when they had 50 deaths per year from natural gas explosions, got it down to 0 for the last 4 years. So they created this very low energy sniffer that could really only identify methane, no false alarms. And so they worked on this technology together, this national standard. And in 2023, they published the national standard.
Amazing. It took me
6 years.
Yeah, crazy.
It took 6 years.
Yeah.
And so then there was now a national standard. The DOB recognized that was the national standard. They wrote the rule. There was a public comment period. I testified before City Council like 5 times. And then they produced the final law in February, which said every dwelling in New York City with natural gas appliances has to install a natural gas detector by May 1st of 2025. It has to be installed either on the ceiling or within a foot of the ceiling, and basically no further away than 10 feet, and depending on the device, for stoves, no closer than 5 feet if you're using the Dodoma Detect device. So it's basically a band between 5 and 10 feet for stoves, and a band between 3 and 10 feet around every other appliance.
That runs on
gas.
On natural gas.
Yeah.
And did they do it for propane too?
So,
and the reason why I asked that is because, here we're used to natural gas in New York
Right.
City, but I'm sure that throughout the country, we get to other places,
so this device only, and I have them here, these devices do methane.
Okay.
And I don't think they're sensitive to propane, but there are definitely propane detectors.
somebody must got to have it. So May 1st, 2025,
Yes.
we are going to do, prior to that, you and I are going to do a Q&A on what local law 157 is. I'd like to invite you because you're a great writer. I'm going to ask you some questions, and we're going to remind people throughout New York City that they need to do this. And they either need to inform their landlord that they should do it. And if they don't have it, I'm assuming it doesn't matter if you're in an apartment building or a 1 or 2 family house.
Everywhere.
Everybody's got to do it.
Yeah.
So let's remember when we watch this show later on, when we put it out to the public, that you and I will, and I'll put it on my calendar, that we will remind New Yorkers that
Sounds
this
great.
is a new law and this is something that you need.
Yeah.
So to sum it up, John, the system that you've created is really built for multiple dwellings,
Yes.
right?
And commercial buildings as well.
That's where I wanted to ask you.
We can put an automatic valve just on the roof, and maybe that's going to cost, including the plumber, maybe $4,000, $3,000, whatever. But what it can do then is turn off the water automatically to the building as soon as it senses a leak.
Correct.
So that way, if overnight or over the weekend a leak starts, you don't come in on a Monday and you've lost your whole building. This would just turn off the water, notify the super, hey, there's a water leak at 39 West 37th Street. They would know that it's on the 5th floor bathroom. They'd go over there, figure out what the leak is, and then from their phone, turn back on the water valve.
Yeah. Just like you would do from an app or whatever.
Exactly. And because we are knuckle dragging dirty shoe professionals, to turn the water back on with our app, we have it so you can open the valve to 20% or 60%.
So you don't hammer the whole place.
You don't hammer the whole place. And that's
Right.
because we come from this world. We're not just tech guys. We come from the world.
Construction world.
Yeah.
So I was, and it slipped my mind for a second, so just give me a second. I was thinking that in the big picture of this, why do you think, well, 2 questions. One is, why do you think that it can't be cost effective? And for 1 and 2 family houses, because I want to give you an example.
Sure.
We think of, I lived in a 5,000 square foot house. I'm now going to a 1,500 square foot house, just me and my wife.
Yeah.
We're not home a lot. Why would I go buy multiple products when, although this sounds like it can work, but
Yeah.
I'm thinking, how many people own, I live in Fairfield County, outside of Greenwich. I live in Stamford. There's homes there that are 15, 20,000 square feet. They're like an apartment building.
Yeah,
And they got 15 bedrooms and 14 bathrooms and,
Right.
the gym and this and that and the pool and the jacuzzi.
It's a much better system for those people. And right now we are working to line up dealers who are going to resell ProSentry, because our mission, what we're trying to do, is to be the ubiquitous source of risk mitigation as a service for whole buildings.
And that's where I was going to go with that, because
Yeah.
I think, so really the $1 million question, if I could just lay it out there, right, is what's the ROI on my investment? And the ROI has a huge upside, because after your initial cost and after your subscription, the labor that you're saying sending your people in your building around, B, hopefully insurance credits that you get from Chubb or whoever else you
Right.
have. B, you got more of an opportunity to get insured at a lower rate if you have the system in place, because not only is Chubb going to say, I want that client, so is, everybody else,
So it's
every
the
other
underlying building.
underwriter.
So let's talk about those ROI things. And I'm so glad we're talking about those. So in insurance, we have, for condos and co-ops, there is the underlying building insurance, and then there's the tenant
correct.
insurance. So Chubb Insurance is just has already applied to the state because of these statistics. It is right now that if you have ProSentry in your apartment, you get a 3% discount. You would get an extra 5%, so a total of 8%, if you had an automatic valve.
Gotcha.
We are so effective because we call the building and the building turns off the water that they realize it's as good as an automatic valve, so they've just applied to the state. So if you put in ProSentry for the whole building you have a live person
8%.
there, you get 8% discount. So for a financially fortunate person who might be paying 20 grand a year, you're going to more than pay off your system in the first year, and then you're going to be putting money in your pocket.
Right.
For other people, it might take 4 years or 5 years or 8 years, but still it's going to pay for itself. And we expect now that Chubb Insurance has publicly filed at the state, the other insurers are now going to follow suit. For the underlying insurance policy, we have tons of relationships with the insurance brokerage communities.
Of course.
So the Hub Insurance, USI, McCool, Lockton, all those people, Foundation Risk Partners, all those people see us as the solution for buildings that are going to be upset about their renewal rates or their deductibles as a way of helping. So in Atlantic City, and we have a white paper on our website, there is a 1,000-room casino, and they had a bad water leak last year. They were none of the 10 insurers that would normally insure the property in layered insurance would come back and insure it again. They had to go to a specialty market. It was going to cost them $1 million more a year for the next 5 years. Crazy. Their third-party risk manager said, you know what, you should talk to ProSentry. I went down on the Atlantic City bus, which is great. I met with them.
Did you have your quarters?
Yeah. We proposed some water leak detection, some temperature detection, some oil leak detection, and an automatic valve for the whole building. Not much money. They went back out to the market and said, hey, we're putting in this ProSentry system. All 10 of the original insurers came back in, and they ended up with a standard 10% increase. So they saved $4.9 million by putting in ProSentry over 5 years.
Listen, one of the things Fran and I always talked about is that we never really wanted on the show, Fran, the producer, for it to be someone to come in and sell their company, because we wanted to educate people.
Sure.
I think that this is an incredible education, because to be honest with you, you're not really selling the product, you're selling the concept.
Yeah.
And to me, it's amazing that it's taken us this long, right, to be able, as technology gets better, to make it affordable. There's systems that were out there, but they were just too damn expensive. People couldn't get that ROI that they needed for that return. Perfect example, ADT. Great company. Have them in my old house. I went to the store, I bought a Ring system, I put it in my new house. It cost me $10 a month, and it's better, to be honest with you. The customer service is better, everything is better, and I did it myself. So technology helps us to do all these things. So at the end of every show, John, we kind of talk about two things, and I give my friend a free plug. He's become one of my dearest friends. His name is Andrew Peters. He's the cost estimator for Curry & Brown. And he's got one of the most intriguing and difficult jobs in the world, because someone comes to him and says, I want to build a 30,000 square foot lab in Philadelphia. I don't have a building. I don't have a site. I don't have an architect. How much is it going to cost?
Oy.
Right? So his job is to take past, project, and say, well, when do you want to start the project? Well, not for another 2 years. And he has to go to them and say, look, this project is going to cost you $1,100, $1,500 a square foot. So they could go out, they can fundraise, they can get donors, and they can build a new lab at Villanova. I'm
Yeah.
making it up, right? But he has a saying: the rear view mirror in your car is this big, and your windshield is this big. We always look forward. We kind of look back a little bit, but most of the time we're looking forward. So tell us a little bit about what you think this product will do to where my world is. Local Law 157, insurances for building managers and family owned, own 5,000 apartments in Manhattan. This is a huge deal for them.
Right. So one of the problems, and we haven't talked about this, and I could talk about a million things. This is a water leak meter. So the Lafrac family figured out that they could use LoRaWAN technology to put a water meter, because you can't charge for water in New York State unless you individually meter the tenants.
Right.
So by putting a water meter at the shower head, hot water at the sink, and the toilet, they figured they can capture about 90% of their water usage. And so they're now back billing tenants for water usage in the buildings that they can do that. And so I think the rental companies, those landlords, owner-operators, are really going to start using LoRaWAN technology to charge for water and also to do better water leak detection so they have less mold in their apartments, less repair costs,
staining,
less unhappiness between people who
Drip,
live in
drip,
them.
drip,
Because
drip.
once you're leaked on by upstairs, you start a beef. If they leak on you a second time, it's no good.
No.
You start to have unhappiness within a building, which nobody wants. Like this detector, this is a mousetrap. A good friend of mine has a high-end restaurant. We caught 17 mice in 2 weeks. Not a single one died inside the walls. This technology, and his porter would get the beef.
Signal. Mouse in your trap.
That's what it does.
I love it.
Because you can't tell that there's a mouse in it and it's dark, their porter would just walk over while people are dining, pick one up, put a new one down. Everything's cool. But it's the future. We have smoke and vape sensors coming out, which also we're working on a lithium battery sniffer, which is going to be huge for the fire department. Thermostatic control. This is the way, LoRaWAN is the way that buildings are going to automate themselves. And we've worked really hard to get the cost down enough. Because in my looking in the future, the reality of it is the insurance company, now that we exist and it's this inexpensive, they're just going to tell everybody, you have to put it in.
Well, they mandated me.
Yeah.
Upstate, they mandated me.
And I believe that's what's going to happen
When
on
they
all
sent
of
me
the real estate assets.
sent me the homeowners, they said, "Do you have a Watts?" And they
Right.
gave me 3 devices.
Sure.
And they said you could pick any one of the
Yeah.
3. And then after I installed them, I put the water detection system on the main valve off the well.
Right.
And they made me take a photograph, certify it that I put it in.
Yeah.
And when they come and they do the annual, every couple of years they come, Chubb does it, and they come by, the guy always asks me to go downstairs and look at it.
And it makes sense because if I can stop this, in other words, the insurance companies cannot go on hemorrhaging millions of dollars of cash when a $70 detector, $75 detector can stop the thing. Do you want to see it work?
Sure.
So if I take my phone, and this is when it's white knuckle time, because I got Sisto live here. Sisto, right now I have no texts.
That's
Right,
correct.
that green text.
No text.
No text. I'm going to take this
I feel
sensor.
like I'm on an infomercial.
Exactly. I'm going to drop it in the water. So this device is now sending a signal to this gateway. It's going to go up to the cloud. It's going to say, oh my goodness, there's a water leak. It's then going to send a signal over to Verizon to send that phone a text, which I should be getting a text depending on the signal strength.
I don't know where your text is.
Let's see. It's not there yet. This is the scary part. I could be lying. It may never happen. Yeah, it should happen. Let's see.
There it is.
There it is. All right, now click on that text. And what does it say?
I can't read it. I don't have my glasses.
It says, sensor, demonstration glass of water leak sensor, reported a water leak at Sisto says, 52 Diamond Street, Brooklyn, New York, in conference room.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
And it is. It's nerve-wracking, but it always works. That's the beautiful thing about this.
It's amazing. This is really cool. I do feel like I'm on an infomercial.
Yeah,
I keep
sorry
going,
about that,
This is
man.
amazing. This is great. This is crazy. I can think of how do I can do this, right? I feel like
it's
I'm
exciting
busy.
stuff.
But it is.
2,485 leaks, not a single insurance claim?
That's crazy.
How do you do that? Yeah.
It's crazy. Well, listen, John, first of all, it's always a pleasure to see you. I always
see you.
enjoyed working with you. I attribute me getting to see you again through the power of people. Congratulations on an incredible endeavor. congratulations with your family on continuing to keep Rusk Renovation going and profitable and having a vision and a mission statement to educate your workers and your company. And I can honestly say that any way that I can help you, I am here for you, because I truly think this is an incredible thing, because it's not just about saving money, it's about saving lives. It's about adhering to the laws in New York City, which I'm a big proponent of. Any life lost because of a gas leak or because of
you'll see it in the Q&A on the gas detection. But with our gas detector, you're no longer asking your super to run into an apartment and not know how much gas is in there, and he could lose his life by doing this. Now we're telling the super, there's a gas leak that had just started in apartment 21J, and it's at 10% of what it would take to explode, which means it's now safe for him to go in there, turn off the gas, and open the window.
Like when the fire department comes, they come with a meter. If it's over a certain thing, they don't go in.
Right,
There's
exactly.
a reason.
and this does the same thing. And likewise, with the monitored one, it means that the super will know as soon as it starts, and they'll know where it is, as opposed to with the unmonitored ones that the fire department could show up at a building. No one knows there's a gas leak, and they have no choice but to shut off the gas to the building. Right. And that's a disaster.
Oh, in New York City, once they shut your gas, you're in big trouble.
You're in big trouble.
Big trouble. Well, John, this was incredible.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for taking the time out.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it.